My name is Binod Shankar. And first of all, thanks to Heriot Watt University, Dubai campus, Edinburgh Business School, and to Dr. Elena and Ullas Rao for inviting me to speak today. Great university, great platform to talk about something very close to my heart, which is careers and investments and accounting. Before I start, can you guys sort of message in the chat box, how many of you have started seriously thinking about careers post your graduation? Just say yes in the chat box. How many of you are really thinking about should be CFA or ACCA or MBA or internships or whatever, right? I'm just curious to know how many of you are really thinking about that at this stage. Go ahead, don't be shy. Right. So let me start off by introducing myself, right? I think Elena mentioned about me, but I'll go into slightly more depth, and that'll probably give you an idea of my career progression, right? And what I've done. So this is basically my CV, and I want to stress that it might look very planned and structured, and it flows from one to another. Actually, it wasn't very much planned. And I wanted to keep this in mind. Lots of people, you see the CVs and you say, you know what, you must have planned this career move. I can honestly confess to you right now that I've probably made 4 major changes in my career, as in changed my original plans. And no regrets, because those changes were because I disliked one sector, I liked something else more suited to my skills and my temperament, right? So this happens. So that's, I think, one key takeaway that you have to keep in mind. It's impossible to plan a 10-year career or 25-year career, right? You'll be lucky these days if you can plan 2 to 3 years ahead. Second important point is qualifications are very important. So I qualified as a chartered accountant in 1992, and then got my CFA charter in 2006. And then I got my executive coaching qualification in 2018. So it does help a lot if you are qualified, because then you don't have to explain yourself to people when you are at an interview, for example. You don't have to talk about how come you did all these things and where is your credibility. So I think that sets the theme for the rest of today's discussion: the importance of qualifications and certifications. Apart from our experience, of course. Now, if you are a fresh graduate and you're getting into these 2 sectors that I'm going to talk about, accounting and finance, right? Accounting investments. When people look at you, you have a degree, sure, good college, Heriot Watt, of course. But beyond that, they want to see that you are interested, you are committed to a particular career. Employees want to see that, right? Hiring managers want to see that. How do you evidence that? How do you demonstrate that? You demonstrate that by starting, if not completing, a journey in some serious qualification, which we'll talk about, whether it's CFA or CMA or CIMA or ACCA, whatever, right? One of those globally respected qualifications, because that shows to the employers that, hey, this guy is not just enthusiastic about finance, but he's actually started the journey. He's past level 1 of CFA, for example. So it sort of conveys, it's like a signaling device. It sort of conveys to people that, you are ambitious about a career in a particular area. And that way you also stand out, right, from others who might just be applying to jobs just as fresh graduates and nothing else. So that is one thing I want to stress as well. So that's my background. I like I said, I have been here for 20 years now in the Middle East. Worked with KPMG, Anderson, Ernst & Young, spent about 17 years in corporate life, left as executive director of finance with a listed asset manager in Bahrain. And then I left my corporate life at the age of 40, had this revelation in 2009, and quit my corporate life and started a company that was involved in financial training. We started a CFA prep company. Cut a long story short, fast forward, and by 2017, we were much bigger and we were acquired by Kaplan, which is a multinational, right? So that was a very successful exit. These days, like Elena mentioned, I'm a market analyst on CNBC and Bloomberg, where I use my CFA knowledge and my investment experience. I'm a platform speaker. I have what you call podcast, and I will talk about that later as well, which is focused on finance careers. So without further ado, let me dive into the two areas I want to talk about today. Basically, investment management and accounting, careers in investment management. And we have a Q&A, but please keep your questions coming on the chat box. Ullas Rao is the moderator. So he's going to pick the toughest questions, right, Ullas? And make sure
absolutely,
that
Binod, yeah.
He's going to make sure that he gets maximum return on investment on my time. with Heriot Watt. So please keep your questions coming. Don't be afraid to ask. There is no dumb question. I love interacting with youngsters. So feel free to ask, please. Yeah. Right. Let's talk about the first area, right? And the first area is investments. Specifically, I want to talk about investment management. Now, investment management is basically, let me explain what that is, right? You manage other people's money, or you advise them on how to manage the money. That's pretty much it, right? Basically. Now, these clients that you help can either be individuals, what you call retail investors, or institutional. Now, institutionals are huge. You have universities, you have endowments, you have insurance companies, banks, pension funds, will all come to you as an asset manager and say, please manage our money based on certain objectives and constraints and things like that, right? So this sector of what you call investment management, right, covers asset management, it covers wealth management and investment research. Briefly speaking, asset management is when you manage institutional money. Wealth management is when you manage individuals' money. And investment research is when you analyze stocks and bonds and write all sorts of recommendations. You do financial analysis or portfolio allocation and things like that. That's what you call investment research, right? And of course, you issue buy, hold, or sell recommendations on stocks, which is actually a core part of what CFA charter holders, analysts do in the world of investments. And of course, very importantly, CFA is the gold standard in investment education. What do I mean by gold standard? It's by far the only widely recognized accreditation globally in this area. So you have multiple chartered accounting qualifications, right? Or professional accounting qualifications, or management accounting qualifications, or MBA, masters in finance. There's only one CFA for a good reason, because it's been established specifically for this purpose. And the institute, CFA Institute, has taken it very seriously over the last 60 years to make sure the standards in both exams and practice are upheld. So it's very rigorous in both theory and practice. I'll talk more about this. But this is basically to explain to you what is investment management. And when you're thinking about a career, what should you be looking at? Right. So who are the big employers? You probably are familiar with these names, but I'll sort of point them out to you. So JP Morgan is a big bank, but like many big banks, they also have an asset management division, which is huge. Goldman Sachs is another big investment bank, which, like I said, like other bulge bracket banks, has a sizable asset management division. BlackRock is not a bank. BlackRock is a dedicated investment manager. It manages about trillions of dollars of institutional money and individual money through various funds and ETFs and things like that. Standard Chartered Bank, as you know, is a big multinational bank, has its own asset management division. And then you have CFA charter holders working, especially in this region, right? In the big four, Deloitte, Ernst & Young, PwC, and KPMG. They don't manage money there, but they are into advisory. They advise money managers, they advise treasury departments, they advise on financial strategy. They advise on valuation, right? So a lot of my former students actually work in the Big Four in Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Riyadh and Doha, where they actually do valuations of companies, which of course is a core part of the CFA curriculum. Now, this is not the only employers, right? You have sovereign wealth funds like ADIA right down the road in Abu Dhabi, or Mubadala, or PIF, Public Investment Fund in Saudi Arabia, or the Kuwait Investment Authority. These manage the government's money, right? So these are really what you call sovereign wealth funds. And there are quite a few of them around the world. But the largest number of CFA charter holders in the Middle East work in ADIA, Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. And I think out of 900 employees, about 300 are CFA charter holders. Shows you the importance of the qualification, right? So this is the kind of employers that you should be targeting if you're planning to start the CFA program, right? Now, importantly, what are the requirements? So, and we'll talk about how do you get the CFA charter, what are the exams and what are the topics and things like that. I'll come to that. But before that, what do employers look for apart from the CFA charter, right? Which, like I said, is like a gold standard. If you want to enter asset management, it's like the minimum qualification you need to have, at least past level 1 or level 2, right? If not the CFA charter completely. So what are the requirements? What do employers look for? Now, of course, a lot of my students work with asset managers. A lot of my colleagues and ex-colleagues work with investment firms. So I get a lot of feedback from senior managers, from CIOs, CEOs as to what they look for in a candidate, right? So this is what they broadly look for, right? Of course, some specific requirements will exist for certain jobs, but this is what they look for. Analytical ability, right? Big picture, economic and math skills, attention to detail. I would rank this right at the top. We talk about stocks, sectors, cyclical stocks, defensive stocks, growth stocks, macroeconomics, monetary policy, fiscal policy, a lot of the things that you have studied at or studying at undergrad level. But this is application of all that, right? So what's happening in the US right now? What's happening in China, at both macro level and micro level? How do you tie that that macro information to stock performance and stock outlook? How do you factor that into your valuation? Very important, right? Of course, valuation is a core part of CFA, is a core part of investment management. Valuation simply means what is the intrinsic value of a stock or a bond or any asset which has a cash flow attached to it, including real estate. And of course, CFA curriculum is a lot about how do you value equities and derivatives and bonds and real estate, right? Income producing real estate. Now that, of course, you have to be pretty good at that. It's technical. It involves things like weighted average cost of capital and CAPM and beta and all those wonderful concepts, right? Which you probably are studying at college these days. Of course, it also helps a lot. This is what I hear a lot from employers. If you have some broad knowledge beyond valuation, beyond accounting, beyond finance, right? You are a much better analyst if you know a little bit of history and economics and philosophy and science. And the reason I say that is because increasingly the lines between sectors are blurring. Let's take Tesla, right? Everyone's heard about Tesla, the big US electric vehicle company. You could argue that Tesla is a car maker. You could argue actually that it's an energy storage company. You could argue it's a software company, right? And it could be true. I mean, all this could be true. So Tesla is not like Ford or Toyota or Volkswagen. It's a company one of those unique companies that has brought together everything else. So you need to know a bit about all those sectors to be a successful analyst of Tesla. And if you look around, you'll see that analyst opinion about Tesla is very divergent because people have dramatically different opinions about this. And they come from different angles. Ability to reason, specifically, the ability to separate rubbish from relevant information. Because remember, every day you're being bombarded with information from CNBC, Yahoo, Bloomberg, YouTube, WhatsApp, Facebook, you name it, right? LinkedIn. Now, you as an analyst must be able to distinguish what information in that is really important to your evaluation and what is just noise. What is signal and what is noise is something that a lot of the time comes with experience, but you need to get an idea of that, right? And of course, a very clear thought process. When people come to me and say, I think this stock is good, the first thing I ask them is, what's your process? I don't really care about whether you said buy or hold or sell. I'm more interested in your process. What process did you follow and why? Justify that to me, and then we can talk. And of course, humility, because ultimately stock markets, bond markets, whatever, they are a conglomeration of individual biases and emotions, right? So all this technical stuff is fine and fundamental analysis is important, but markets are driven by more than that. They're driven by momentum and emotion, and that's why you get bubbles and crashes. And a lot of the time you might be wrong. You might get your call wrong, right? So you need to be humble enough to know that you are wrong and how to improve, and how do you, keep your emotions under check. And in CFA, we have this topic in level 3 called behavioral finance, which is a fantastic topic, which is little to do with finance and more to do with psychology. Psychology of the client, psychology of the analyst, psychology of the investor, right? It's really very fascinating. So let's talk about CFA in detail, right? Now, you might have heard that there are 3 levels to the program, level 1, level 2, and level 3, right? Now, the difference between the 3 levels is that level 1 is foundation. It's like finance 101, right? I call it like, it's like 1 centimeter deep and 1 mile long. Like it's like that kind of situation. It's not complex, but it's vast. And there are 10 topics, right? And the topics that I've highlighted in yellow are the topics with the maximum exam weightage across all 3 levels. Now, level 1, you have 10 topics. The biggest topics are out there. Financial reporting is big, which is accounting. So your accounting basics must be quite strong. Equities and fixed income, naturally, right? These are the 2 biggest asset classes in the world, right? You invest in stocks or you invest in bonds. So they are, of course, big as well, 10 to 12% each. And you'd be surprised to see that ethics is probably even bigger than any of those topics. In fact, ethics is the only topic that sort of maintains the same weightage across all 3 levels. There's a reason why. If any of you remember the global financial crisis that happened between 2008 and 2009, right? One big reason was lack of ethics, greed, right? Conflict of interest, blah, blah, blah. And that has really seriously damaged the reputation of the banking and financial service industry. Now, way before this happened, CFA has always been saying ethics is important. And they walk the talk by embedding that in the curriculum. And in fact, ethics is the only topic which, if your score is borderline, they look at and decide whether to fail or pass you. It's not that if you fail ethics, you fail the exam. Nope. But if you fail ethics, then your chance of passing is slightly lower now. That's level 1. Level 2 is what I call valuation. So a lot of the stuff you do, what you study in level 2 is valuation related, valuation of bonds, stocks, derivatives, alternatives, everything else, right? So as a result, you see that a lot of time is spent on equities and fixed income, and also financial reporting. Now, level 3 is a very weird beast, right? Because level 3 is not foundation like level 1 or valuation like level 2. Level 3 is actually about application. And this is where you apply what you learned in level 1 and level 2. So as you see, you will not see economics. So you will not see quantitative methods in level 3. You will not see corporate finance in level 3. You will not see financial reporting in level 3, because these are considered as investment tools. And you're done with that by level 2. So level 3, a lot of the time is spent, if you look at the bottommost row, in portfolio management and wealth planning, about 35 to 40%. Because level 3 is where you learn how to structure portfolios, analyze portfolios, recommend portfolios to clients, right? Based on what you learned in level 1 and 2, with economics and corporate finance and FRA and everything else. So in level 3, you learn to manage a fixed income portfolio. You learn to manage a stock portfolio. You learn to manage the risks of these portfolios. You will learn about behavioral finance, like I talked about, right? You learn to talk about how do you measure performance, how do you report performance. So in my journey, I found level 3 the most interesting because it was the closest to reality. And I found level 2 because I was already a chartered accountant. Level one was basic. Level 2 was tough. It is a lot of theory and calculations. Level 3 has also theory and calculations, but it's quite interesting that way. Yeah. So this is the breakup of CFA: level 1, level 2, level 3. Each exam is 10 topics for level 1 and 2 and 7 topics in level 3. Right? I will talk about the exam in more detail later. Right? The curriculum changes like about 10% every year. So between 2020 and 2021, the curriculum was static because of COVID. But for 2022, there's a change. And all changes are available on the CFA Institute website, right? It's quite transparent that way. Right? Let's talk about the job type. What kind of jobs do you get, right? I mean, there's, like I said, CFA is a gold standard in investment education. So anything related to asset management, advisory, portfolio management, fund management is what you should look at, right? So chief investment officer, portfolio manager, wealth manager, right? You have risk analyst, you have equity analyst. So this is what typically the jobs that CFA charter holders get or CFA candidates aspire to. This is a sample, by the way. This is not by no means exhaustive list, right? You can be an economist, right? You can be a trainer. I was a trainer, right? You can be a financial planning manager, and you don't need to be working in finance, by the way. You can be working in a property company or a trading company or a manufacturing company, and you can still get the charter. And we'll talk about the experience part later. As long as you analyze investments and you're recommending some analysis to your company, you qualify, right? So this is some example job titles of CFA. Now, some tips for CFA, right? I already talked about this whole difference between level 1, level 2, and level 3, right? Foundation, valuation, application. Very important, right? Level 1 is the easiest, in my view. Level 3 is probably the most complex because it's less theory and more application. Right? Now, this is interesting because level 1 has the, the lowest pass rate, and level 3 historically has had the highest pass rate. And the reason why that's the case is because people take level 1 very lightly. And they say, you know what, I studied this in undergrad level. How difficult can it be? I did economics, I did stats. But the CFA curriculum, the CFA exam tests you in a very different way. It tests you in terms of concepts, which is why a lot of people fail level 1. Because they come memorizing things and just want to mug up and study in 5 days and pass the exam. And it's not happening, right? You need that 3 to 4 months, depending on your background and things like that. Level 3 has the highest pass rate because by the time you reach level 3, most of the people have been screened out who have not met the criteria, right? That's the reason why. Now, the challenge with CFA is that whether it's level 1 or level 2 is level 3, it's a very broad but also deep curriculum, right? Now, I mentioned to you that level 1 is broad but not deep. But when you go to level 2 and 3, it's both broad and deep, right? So you're talking about a vast curriculum, but also you have to go down and examine lots of complexities, right? Now, the exams are now computer-based as of 2020 because of COVID. They transitioned very rapidly from paper-based to computer-based. And you have 3 4.5 hour exams. And you can have a half an hour break in between. And exams are held at Prometric centers in the UAE. You need to book in advance, and that's it. You write 7 to 10 topics in one day. So that's one challenge about CFA, which people are not accustomed to, right? In your college, in your semester exams, whatever, you don't write 7 to 10 topics in one day, right? I mean, in a semester, you probably cover 3 to 5 topics. That's one challenge that people find in CFA, which is that you have to, over the period of 3 to 4 months, you have to study 10 topics and it'll be tested all in one day. Of course, with practice, this actually is quite doable. Although the way I say it, it sounds difficult. It's not really, okay? Level 1 and level 2 exams are MCQ. What's MCQ? Multiple choice question based. So level 1 is basically, I think, 180 questions, 3 choices, A, B, C. Level 2 is a case study followed by a few MCQs. So that's again, multiple choice. Level 3, it has a written part and a multiple choice part. And the multiple choice is, there's no negative marking, so you can guess. Okay, as long as guessing is not your main strategy, it's fine. So that's the structure of the exams. The results come out about 6 to 8 weeks after the exam, right? Now, financial reporting is 15% of level 1 and level 2. It's actually the single largest topic in level 1 and level 2. So if you're studying accounting in college right now, please give it a lot of attention. Get your basics right. Because a lot of the time I see people coming from college into my FRA class and they don't know the basics of income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, right? They have an issue with that. So we need to make sure that the fundamentals are right, because in CFA level 1, it's assumed that you know most of it. They don't go down to debits and credits. You can if you want to, but it's going to take more time. Ethics is big in all 3 levels. And ethics is a bit complex because it's not like, okay, is it ethical or not? No, they will give you a case, mini case, and say, okay, is there a violation? What violation is it? Or they'll give you a case and say, okay, how do we prevent this violation from happening based on the standards, right? So it's quite what you call reality based, and it's preparing for ethical dilemmas that you might come across when you enter the profession, which is quite common, by the way. And across all 3 levels, not one level, let me not scare you, right? Across all 3 levels, I probably spent about 1,000 hours of study, about 300 hours, I think, although I wasn't keeping exact count, about 300 hours for level 1, probably about 400 hours for level 2, and probably about 300 hours or 400 hours for level 3 overall. This, of course, is a very flexible number. It's based on how good your foundations are, et cetera, right? So don't take this as something cast in stone. For further information, CFA Institute website has a lot of information about eligibility criteria, the curriculum, by study session, by topic, how to apply, and things like that, right? So please check that out. Or you can contact me as well. And happy to share with you insights on this. So some few hacks, CFA hacks, like I like to call them, right? Now, once you finish the, right, you get into investment management. This is very important, I tell you, right? You get a career as an analyst or an associate in, whether JP Morgan or Deloitte or PwC or HSBC, right? What are the pros and cons of a career in advisory or asset management, right? Let's look at the pros, right? The money is decent. The work is technical and interesting. It's not selling. Unlike investment banking, which is very client-facing and sell-side, this is more of technical work, valuations, financial analysis, portfolio allocation, risk management. If you have an analytical bent of mind, you might like this. It's growing a lot in emerging markets. So the 2 largest markets over the last decade for CFA candidate growth have been India and China. China is growing at 25% annually in terms of candidate growth. India is growing, or was growing, at about 40% per annum. And it's obvious why. Those markets are rapidly integrating with global markets. Asset managers are being set up. It's getting more sophisticated. Stock markets are increasing in size because more companies are getting listed. So ergo, you need more analysts and fund managers. And because of all this technical work, and because it's not a sales work, it's less stressful and lesser hours compared to investment banking, which is a very different beast altogether, right? Which CFA doesn't really prepare you for. The minuses are that the whole asset management sector is probably going to be not dominated, but you're going to have significant influence of automation and AI, artificial intelligence. Passive investing is coming in. There is a market risk, of course. If you invest money, you can lose the money, right? Some of it. And of course, it's not as gloriously well paid as, an MBA from a top Ivy League college working in investment banking. That's the overall view, the pros and cons of a career in asset management, right? That pretty much covers my spiel on finance and investing. Let's get to another interesting area, right? Which is accounting. And here I'm going to segregate into two parts, your financial accounting and your management accounting, right? Let's talk about that, right, briefly. Now, you have management accounting and financial accounting. What's the difference here, right? And you have two sets of qualifications, and you probably heard these names, but you wondered what's the difference, right? Well, management accounting, the users are internal management, as the name indicates, right? Financial accounting, the users are investors and shareholders, external. Purpose of information and management accounting is to help management plan, control, and decide. Financial accounting is basically record financial performance and financial position, your income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow, right? Formats, well, management account depends on management, right? Let's say they want a cost report in this way or a budget variance report in this way, whatever, right? Depends on the industry, depends on the company, depends on the size of the company. Financial accounting is quite rigid, quite inflexible. You have to report the information in the format and the contents as required by GAAP. Now, by GAAP, I don't mean US GAAP. I mean generally accepted accounting principles, which also covers international financial reporting standards. So by GAAP, I mean accounting principles followed globally, right? If it's in the US, it's US. If it's in UK, it's UK GAAP. If it's in the Middle East or Russia, Eastern Europe or China, it's IFRS, right? Nature of information, right? Management accounting, because you're trying to help management in planning, controlling, and decision making, right? It's all about cost analysis and how do you price goods and services and preparation of budgets and forecasting cash flows and profitability. And of course, after the period is over, you tell management, okay, this is how we performed, right? And how well we did or how badly we did. Financial accounting, very strict, very straightforward. Financial statements and the annual report, normally audited. And of course, proximity to business. If you're a management accountant or what you call a FP&A manager, financial planning analysis manager, or a cost controller, or you're very close to the business, right? You're very close to what the business is doing because you exist to help them do their work better, which is good actually, because I enjoyed that kind of work because you know the business very well. You interact with a lot of non-finance people. As you know, finance people can get very boring, right? Especially accountants. I hope no accountant is listening to me. And that's fun. Financial accounting is not linked to the business as such. It's pretty much reporting. And you report what the business has done. You don't need to tell business what's happened. You're not giving them any information to help them do their job better. You exist to basically disclose company information to investors who have invested billions in your company's stock, or maybe who have lent your money to your company as banks, right? Time horizon, management accounting, you look at the past, but more importantly, you look at the future. You are forecasting, you're developing budgets. Financial accounting is very different. They're very, these guys look back. They're always historical, post-mortem analysis. It's not a defect. It is just the nature of the job. You're not expected to give any forecasts of how the company will do. And the qualifications here are probably what you've heard before, right? So for financial accounting, you have basically your CPA, ACCA, and ICAW, and chartered accountant is CA. For management accounting, you have your CMA and CMA qualifications, right? So as you can see, they're quite different, right? Now the exams, I'm going to compare these two, CMA and ACCA specifically, because in this market, GCC, UAE, right? ACCA is big, and to a certain extent, so is CMA and CFA. So typically, when graduates approach me for advice, they talk about these three qualifications, right? So I'm going to focus on these three because that's what employers also recognize. That's what graduates want to do. And that's what there's a market for as well. And I'm deliberately comparing with CFA in this slide, although I said accounting, so that you get a big picture view of both accounting and finance. And so they can decide what to do. Exams, number of topics. CFA has the maximum number of topics, right? 10 in level 1 and 2, and 7 in level 3. Right? Now, of course, if you're a graduate, you want to think about exemptions. CFA does not give any exemption. Doesn't matter which college you pass out from. You have to write all the topics. ACCA has the big advantage that out of 13 papers, you can get exemptions up to 9 papers. So I have to restate, up to 9. Doesn't mean you will get 9. Depends on which university you graduate from. So you got to check up with ACCA, ask them, and they'll tell you. You might get 7 or 8 or 9. If you get 9 exemptions, you only write 4 papers for ACCA, right? Which is a big advantage. CMA has no exemptions. So basically, you have to write all the papers. The tough parts, now this is very relative, right? What is tough? What is not tough? In CFA, I think quite a few topics in level 2 and level 3 are considered tough. Again, depends on who you speak to. In ACCA, the 4 professional papers, right? So there are 9 foundation papers and 4 professional papers. Some of those 4 are considered tough. And CMA part 2 is largely financial accounting, which you're familiar with, so not that tough. Part 1 is actually a lot of cost accounting, as in activity-based costing and performance analysis, which a lot of graduates are not familiar with, right? So that's probably tougher for that reason. Overall passing rate, CFA, this is the overall passing rate for all 3 levels, right? Average passing rate for CFA for the last, say, 10 years is about 20%. Not level 1, not level 2 or 3. I'm talking about the people who got past level 3 divided by the number of people who enrolled for level 1. That's about 18 to 20%. That hasn't changed at all for the last many, many years. Overall passing rate, I think for CM and ACCA is about 50%, so much higher passing rates. And of course, difficulty to pass, relatively speaking, CMA is much easier. ACCA is tougher because of the professional papers and CFA, of course, especially level 3 and level 2. Despite the higher passing rates, a lot of candidates find those 2 levels more challenging than level 1. Completion time, CMA is the easiest, right? You can probably do it. I know someone who did it in 1 month, but let's say 2 to 3 months, right? ACCA, you push yourself, minimum time, probably 6 months. CFA, if you push yourself, the new exam schedule, probably about 1.5 years, right? 18 months, you're done with the 3 levels. The charter is separate. What the CFA Institute says, on average, candidates take 4 to 5 years, right? I took 2 years to finish. So I started my journey with level 1 in December 2003 and finished level 3 in June 2005. That was when you could only write level 2 and 3 once a year. And you could only write level 1 twice a year. Now you can write level 1, I think 4 times a year, and you can write level 2 and 3 twice a year. So basically, it's better for you because you can pass faster, you can clear the whole program and move on with your life, right? Work experience required. This is very important, right? So in all these 3 qualifications, once you pass the exams, you don't automatically become a member. You can't automatically say, ACCA or after your name or CFA after your name. If you take CFA specifically, the latest requirements are that you need to have 4,000 hours or 3 years of qualifying work experience. That's quite strict, by the way. And qualifying work experience basically means any statistical, financial, or economic analysis leading to decision-making, investment decision-making is what CFA Institute asks for, right? And they want that because they want you to become a practitioner in finance. They want you to become technically adept so that you go out there and manage client money, right? ACCA and CMA, 2 years each work experience. And from what I've heard, not that difficult to accrue as well, right? Number of exams, CMA, you have 2 parts, ACCA, minimum 2 exams with 2 papers each. That's about four papers covered in 2 exams. CFA, you have minimum 3 exams, 1 exam for each level. Like I said, 1 4.5-hour exam, computer-based exam for each level. So there's no exemption there. Do you have tutors available? Prep availability? Yes, for all 3 levels, right? You can Google and find out. I used to run Genesis, which was later acquired by Kaplan. Now it's called Kaplan Professional Middle East, which is probably the largest, most well-known CFA prep company in the UAE. You can find similar organizations for ACCA and CMA as well. If you need to do it, I'm not saying you should do it. A lot of the time, If your foundations are good, you can study at home and pass the exam. You don't need to go and pay fees and attend these prep courses, right? The cost is highest for CFA. When I say cost, I'm talking about registration cost, exam registration cost, course enrollment fees. It's not a huge amount compared to MBA. It's quite a lot of value for money, but it's more expensive than, say, CMA or ACCA, which I don't know the exact number, but it's not as expensive as CFA is, right? And of course, you can check out websites and get more information on all these three programs. You can talk to the counselors. You can actually meet them in their offices. So ACCA has an office in Dubai, and so does IMA, the Institute of Management Accountants, which I think has an office in Knowledge Park. And CFA Institute has an office in Abu Dhabi, but you can always write to their US office, and they're normally quite prompt in replying to you, right? If you have any queries about what's your eligibility criteria and things like that. Now, very important, you told about, sectors and pros and cons of each sector and what are the different qualifications and exams and how difficult it is, blah, blah, blah. But Binod, tell us, how well respected are these qualifications in the UAE? Okay. Now, this is a bit controversial what I'm going to say, and please, this is my opinion, but my opinion based on talking to many students, and I've been teaching for the last 15 years, almost full time, and taught about 4,000 CFA students as well. So I know I have an idea about what employers look for. Plus, I talked to a lot of employers and HR managers and recruitment managers as well, right? So this is what they all tell me, and I've summarized that for you. Again, I'm going to compare the three, right? CMA, ACCA, and CFA. I respect CMA, let's start from there. It's quite low. Very few people ask for it. ACCA is still low. A few companies ask for it, especially the big four, the PwCs and KPMGs of the world. It's seen as the entry-level qualification, right? It gives you the basic knowledge of financial accounting and auditing and some compliance matters. That's it. CFA is seen as the respect is more higher. It's higher than both for many reasons. One reason is it's a gold standard in asset management or investment education, like I said earlier. There's no other equivalent globally. And it's rigorous. And the exams are tough. And it takes a longer time. And need 3 years experience and. So employers know what goes into getting a CFA charter, right? So when you tell them that you're past level 3, even though you haven't got the charter, they know it's not an entry-level qualification. Right? Number of jobs, CFA, not that many. ACCA, a lot of jobs because it's entry-level. So you can go into a big four and start as a junior auditor. There are a lot of jobs out there as accountants, for example. CMA, management accounting is still yet to pick up in the region. So it's not that popular. Typical roles here. Because demand is important. And CFA in the region, specifically Dubai, Abu Dhabi, there's still a limited supply of CFA charter holders and candidates compared to the demand. For ACCA and CMA, I would say it's probably the other way around, especially for ACCA, where lots of people graduate from college and jump into ACCA because it's shorter, it's cheaper, it's easier, a lot of exemptions. And as a result, you have a lot of ACCA candidates out there, and that's not helping in the demand supply equation. And fresher pay, CFA wins again because of limited supply, right? Global recognition we talked about earlier. So basically, my motto here is no pain, no gain, right? I don't know whether Ullas agrees with me or not, but this is, I mean, nothing valuable is easy, is my take on careers and qualifications. If you want to stand out, which is very important these days, then you need to slog for it, right? As Elena mentioned, I've got a podcast and a website going, and that's been up for nearly 2 years. Very important I mentioned this to you because a lot of what I've said and more than that is actually on my website, therealfinancemeta.com. There's a podcast that I publish every month, and it's very focused on finance careers. So I talk to CFA charter holders, chartered accountants, ask them about the experience, what they learned, their tips, etc., etc. So I strongly suggest you go up there, check it out, and also follow me on LinkedIn. You can't connect with me because LinkedIn has this absurd rule that, once you cross 30,000 connections, you can't connect with someone. You have to follow them. 30,000 is not a big number, but please follow me. And I blog regularly on careers and upskilling and universities and things like that. And listen to a few podcasts and webinars on my website, specifically one where I compare CFA versus MBA, the second link. The first one where I talk very frankly about how to succeed in the CFA journey. I think these two links are probably going to be very helpful for you and may answer a lot of the questions that you have in your minds already. And with that, I conclude my session. So over to Ullas for his deadly round of questions.
No. Thanks a lot, Binod. So yeah, the questions were streaming in, so I've made a careful note of it. So Ashwin, I mean, very quickly, would you want to put your video or the mic on and ask yourself, or should I ask on your behalf? You have to take a very quick decision.
Yeah, I don't mind.
Yes, Ashwin, please go ahead.
So I'm actually doing my level 1, or currently, like the first level, my first attempt I failed. So I'm redoing my attempt of level 1. I'm concerned, how do I break into the research analyst field?
Right, Ashwin. So thanks for asking the question. It's, I think, something I've answered quite often on my blogs as well, right? If you have been following me, which is that CFA level 1 is important, but I think if you are really serious about equity research, you need to reach out to fund managers, CIOs, analysts, and show them your work. What have you done? What company have you valued? Show them the report, show them the financial model, and rather than saying you're enthusiastic about finance or whatever, let them see your work and and see what you've done, rather than trying repeatedly for CFA level 1, which you should continue, by the way. You should continue the journey. But I think employers want to know what skills you have, what work you have done on that area, and whether you can hit the ground running, rather than saying I've passed level 1 alone. If that makes sense, yeah.
I've actually done some models. The problem is everyone's telling me the times are tough right now. Jobs, you're not getting any jobs right now because of the entire pandemic situation. So, wanted to mainly ask about that.
Well, that's true and not true. Yes, times are tough, Ashwin, but then and employers are selective. They're right. But then that puts more stress on standing out, right? How do you stand out from the crowd? The level 1 helps, or level 2 helps, definitely. But beyond that, they want to see. So if you came to me and said, Binod, can you get me a job, for example, I would say, why should I help you? What's it about you that really stands out? Right? I'm just giving just sort of example to help you. Yeah. Why would I risk my reputation by referring you to X or Y or a company? Have you done evaluation? Show me the evaluation. Have you written a report? Show it to me, right? What is your view on markets? What is your view on US monetary or fiscal policy? Do you have a view about China? Can you answer these questions? If yes, then yeah, I might say, what, maybe I have something in mind, I can refer you. So it's all about keeping up to date, not just being bookish and being focused on studies alone. Like I said, keep track of the news, updates, markets, and be prepared to stand out in an interview. Employers are tired of seeing same old CVs, same old spiel. I want a job. No, that's not enough. They want to see, okay, what value can you add once you join? That's what they want to see.
Yeah. Okay. Binod, for the paucity of time, so I'll just combine the two questions that we have. So one is so he identifies the participant identifies as iPhone. So between CFA, ACCA, and CMA, which one is better? He's already working in the corporate finance industry, in project finance, and so on. And related to that is one question by Mr. Azhar, who is actually a major in petroleum and engineering. But he's wanting to know if he can get a job on investment banking by doing self-study.
Let me answer the second question first. I'm not sure I got the first question right. Can you get a job in investment banking by self-study?
That's the second question.
That's the second question, right? Yeah.
The student is petroleum engineering. Yeah.
Right. So investment banking, Azhar, I think your name is Azhar. Investment banking is an area where your skills at presentation and negotiation and communication are paramount. And the best way, the most common way of breaking into investment banking is by doing a master's in finance or an MBA from a top college. So you go through campus interviews. I don't know what you mean by self-study, but the big investment banks look for a top college MBA ideally. Yeah. And what is the first question?
The first question is the student is already working in corporate finance, so he wants to choose between CFA or ACCA specifically in order to get improve his promotional opportunities.
I mean, corporate finance is a wide area. So corporate finance, you mean you're working in a company handling
project finance. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
project finance, CFA is of limited use. I would say probably a ICAW or a CIMA might be more relevant for that, or even an MBA might be more relevant because it's not very technical. CFA is technical; it's a practitioner's qualification. You don't need CFA for corporate finance. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, completely agree with you. Sure. I'll play a devil's advocate, Binod here. So there was a recent article on Bloomberg which said that Wall Street's CFA is a colossal waste of time. Your thoughts on that, please?
And that's a big area you opened up. so it's a complex question that deserves a long answer. I think the writer in that article briefly said that CFA is a colossal waste of time because it beats the creativity out of you. It basically teaches you to be very bookish. It doesn't help you become a better investor, and that he learned more from his MBA than from his CFA. Now, of course, that's a very subjective opinion. It's not based on any research or survey or analysis, right? I can say the same thing. You can say the same thing. I would like to say that, and this is a very frank opinion, CFA is a practitioner's qualification meant for specific areas: asset management, wealth management, investment research. If you want to do anything else, CFA is of very limited use. Okay, for example. Number two, CFA will not make you a better investor, right? It'll arm you with the tools and techniques to become good at investing. But there's a lot more to investing than knowing how to value stocks and bonds, especially the emotional and psychological side of it, right? And the market side of it, right? So I would say that, is it a waste of time? No, because it'll give you 4 or 5 things, Ullas. There's a lot of learning, which you rarely get anywhere else. Number two, you learn a lot about yourself. So I found that, a lot of people find that they're quite resilient and are quite driven when they start the CFA journey, and that never leaves them for the rest of their lives. It helps a lot in self-development. CFA is good in networking because you have 140 societies around the world. And that helps, especially these days when knowing people matters as much as what you know, right? Who you know matters as much as what you know. And I think ethics is a very strong part of the CFA curriculum. CFA Institute takes ethics very seriously. And that's what actually keeps CFA qualification ahead, because they crack down on any violations of the standards. So I think learning, self-development, networking, ethics, definitely 4 big reasons why you could do CFA. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Binod. And I think here is the last question, and perhaps the toughest one. And I'm anticipating this on behalf of all our participants here. Right. So there was a very interesting article on Financial Times which said that, Morningstar is increasingly employing artificial intelligence, to churn out very crisp equity research reports, especially for the regular clients. Right. And obviously, they're keeping the human side for very niche clients. So to that extent, do you think the role of an equity research analyst is going to become redundant, especially the human side of it? And, AI, ML, and robotics are literally taking over some of these tasks?
Right. So good question. My quick answer would be, at this stage, it's very difficult to say, Ullas, because we don't know how the future will pan out. Technologies are improving rapidly. But here's my view. In areas like trading, like bond trading or derivatives trading or equity trading, the machines will rule, because these are all rule-based mechanical processes where speed and accuracy are paramount. In areas where data crunching is required, machines will rule, because that's again where humans are not as good. In areas like equity research, I think the human element is important because humans bring a lot of things together, which machines can't do, right? The machines can basically give information, but the ultimate decision must be made by the human being. And in wealth management, Ullas, human beings really are very important because it's a human interaction that's involved. and that in advisory work or things like that. So I think the answer would be in trading and equity research. Yes, machines would have a big role. Equity research, not as much. But in wealth management, in advisory, I think the human interaction, just like you have doctors and architects and all those, highly qualified, highly valued professionals who would continue dominating. I think so. You have to pick your areas carefully. And even if you're going to equity research, you need to basically stand out and do things which the machine can't do. The machines can't visualize, they can't collaborate, they can't communicate, they can't empathize, they can't get the big picture. Only a human being can do it. At least as of now. I don't know what will happen after 5 years.
Right, Binod. So I think I will not take any of your time. So let me just formally propose a word of thanks. So friends, I think let us just take this opportunity in expressing our immense gratitude to Mr. Binod Shankar, whom I said is no less than a showstopper. And by the way, those of you who don't know, he's a fitness enthusiast. He's a hiker. He's a mountain climber, cyclist. He's a marathon runner. So I think all of this does add up in giving you a fantastic brain for finance, and his qualifications speak for that. So on behalf of the entire family of Heriot Watt University, our associate head of school, Dr. Paul Hopkinson, our head of AEF, Dr. Yelena, and all the faculty, staff, and students of Heriot Watt, and including the participants, let me, thank you with utmost sincerity. It was really a pleasure having you. Your insights have really opened vast vistas in the enormous and exciting opportunities in accounting and finance, especially in the GCC and UAE, where under a visionary leadership, the country is making a momentous change, from an oil-based to a knowledge-based economy. I think the future belongs to all these participants who are out there. And, we hope to have many such interactions with you in the future as well. Thank you. So if you can just share your email ID, Binod, on the chat box.
Yes, really I will share my email ID. Let me open the chat box. Hold on. It's binod.shankar@gmail.com. Yeah, it's binod.shankar@gmail.com. Please ask a specific query, and please don't ask me to get a job for you, because that's a very different area. But
that's
advice,
the job we'll do probably.
Exactly, that you'll help anyway. But advice on qualifications or career tips or upskilling, and please follow me on LinkedIn, where I post tips. I'm quite active on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. Right, Binod. Thanks a lot. So thank you, participants. Have a very good night, and thank you all.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. I really hope you found it insightful and inspirational. If you did enjoy this episode, please drop us a review and spread the word. And be sure to check out more exclusive content on therealfinancementor.com and my LinkedIn profile, which is Binod Shankar CFA. Let's keep in